How's it going, everybody? This is Resident of Collinwood. I am live, here to talk the arrival of Barnabas Collins with you all. And really, you can't really just talk about the arrival of Barnabas Collins. I think that's the one thing that when we talk about the arrival of Barnabas, we have to first and foremost talk about the arrival of Jason McGuire and Willie Loomis. As my buddy Mark Gilman, shout out to him, has pointed out many times, you cannot, without Jason arriving, there's no Willie Loomis. Um, and he's absolutely right. By the way, how's everyone doing? Hope everybody is well. Um, so that's one thing. What did so here's my first question. I see we have two people in the chat. Here's my first question. Susie, how are you? She's great. Oh my goodness. But hi, Susie. What did you guys think of James Hall's performance as Willie Loomis? Because he's our first Willie Loomis before John Carlin. For me, while I'm waiting for some people to answer, he really laid the seeds to me. He laid the groundwork for what Willie Loomis, who Willie Loomis was. Here's this thief who, he's a lowlife. He's a character who's pretty much morally bankrupt. How he not only he flirts with Carol, and he flirts with Carolyn. He's hitting on Carolyn and Vicky. Carolyn pulls out Uncle Roger's revolver and points it at his head. What a moment that is. Susie, I didn't like him one bit. He was too aggressive and creepy. He was very creepy. He was. I think John, to me, though, when you look at James Hall and John Carlin's portrayal as Willie Loomis, keep in mind, prior to opening Barnabas's coffin, John Carlin still is giving off that creepy vibe a bit. Even when he's right before he fights Burt Devlin. And this is all beautifully set up by James Hall's Willie Loomis. Earlier before James Mitchell Ryan's Burt Devlin is wanting to deck James Hall's Willie Loomis. And so when the fight happens in the Blue Whale between John Carlin's Willie Loomis and Mitchell Ryan as Burt Devlin, it's not a shock. It's not something we're shocked by. This was pushing to this moment. This was building to this moment here. And so, yes, James Hall's Willie Loomis does come to Collinsport. But I think the most important thing to remember, too, he's not coming to Collinsport looking for Barnabas. He's coming to Collinsport because Jason McGuire is bringing him along. To sort of, I can't even really say it's to help rip off Liz anymore, because Jason, to me, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. Dennis Patrick's Jason McGuire seemed to keep James Hall's Willie Loomis, wanted to keep him at arm's length. At first, he didn't want him up at Collinwood. At first, he wanted him to just stay in town. He even says that to him. So that's my question to you. Why do you guys feel that Dennis Patrick's Jason McGuire wanted to keep Willie Loomis at arm's length at first? Why do you guys feel that way? Or why do you think, or sorry, why do you think he wanted to keep Willie Loomis at arm's length? Sorry, that's my question to you guys, to all you guys currently. Yes, I am going to get into Barnabas, by the way. This is all leading to that. And I'm going to get deep into Barnabas. Not too deep. We're not going to go 1795. Susie, because maybe he knew what Jason's true intentions were. And, well, that's the thing. Jason is such a good, is at times a good con artist, and he's not, at times he's not the greatest con artist. He seems to hint Willie may know, and then he seems to hint Willie may not. Like he tells Liz that he does tell Elizabeth, I didn't tell Willie anything about what was in the basement. But it's like, can you really believe him? I mean, he's such a con artist and liar. There's things he is. Now, I can't believe I'm about to give Jason McGuire credibility before we get into Barnabas. I'm going to give Jason McGuire some credibility. This is not good. It's not good at all. Jason does tell the truth about certain things. Now, again, he's shady as shit. He really is. He's really shady. Gordon, hello. Hello. How are you, brother? Gordon says hello, all. Gordon, why do you think Jason McGuire at first wanted to keep Willie Loomis at arm's length away from Collinwood? Susie, he was also a loose cannon. Yes, he was. Like he was ready to always stir down if he didn't get what he wants and didn't have anything to lose. That is a great point. That is a really great point by Susie, because Willie Loomis is very much a loose cannon. Gordon, because he didn't want to share in the spoils. Plus, he was afraid that Willie would interfere in his efforts to woo Elizabeth. That's another great point. And he sort of does, too. Those are both great points by Susie and Gordon. That Susie's point is that Willie's a loose cannon. And when you're watching James Hall's performance and even John Carlin's, that all proves very true. With Gordon's point, Jason is trying to, yes, woo Elizabeth, but he at the same time he's blackmailing her too. He has, what Elizabeth believes is Paul's body in the basement. Spoiler alert: Paul's body isn't in the basement. But so you have this blackmail scheme going on, and here's Jason. He's trying to focus on this. And here's Willie Loomis, who he's told to stay in town, now is in the house. And what does Willie do when he's there? He causes all sorts of problems with the women, with Victoria, with Carolyn especially. Carolyn grabs Roger's gun, points it at him. She's like, I'll blow your head off. She's ready to fire that pistol. Then here's by the way, here's Burt Devlin. He keeps coming around, and him and James Hall have some interesting words, which is gonna set up for the fight later on between Mitchell Ryan as Burt Devlin and John Carlin as Willie Loomis. Now, what did you guys think of David Collins showing Willie Loomis? And keep in mind, this was James Hall at the time he shows this to. James Hall is still playing Willie Loomis when Willie Loomis first sees the portrait of Barnabas Collins. When David Collins shows him the portraits, he shows him Isaac, Jeremiah, and he goes, "Oh, this is Barnabas Collins." What did you all think of that? It's crazy. It it's also crazy to think too that when I went back, like, oh, Susie, well, this was probably one of the shit I was typing. But I'll say this: when you go back and you watch that it's James Hall as Willie Loomis, it's like that's what still shocks me because you got to keep in mind there's moments when again James Hall he plays Willie Loomis first and then it's John Carlin. So the last episode that James Hall is in is when Barnabas's portrait is actually introduced to the family or to Willie. Gordon, David probably ate too much sugar coated cereal, meaning that Roger needed to have a word with Mrs. Johnson. Hey, Gordon, I love that, brother. I can't wait for our discussion Sunday. That's going to be fun. Um, but yeah, I do think that it's interesting that it's David too because no one no Mrs. Johnson does listen to Willie Loomis when he talks, but here's David. Here's this kid who's befriended Burke, but but talking to Willie Loomis and befriending Willie Loomis was sort of eerie. Susie, only times David didn't annoy me because he was just a little boy sharing about his ancestors. He was excited and and almost proud. Yep, he was. He was very proud to introduce his ancestors, Willie Lewis. It was his moment where we saw David really be proud as a Collins, to Susie's point. And here's David, this little boy, Willie, and I do feel this was very dangerous. Here's this guy who's portrayed some sort of psychotic, crazy, loose cannon behavior, back to Susie's point she made earlier, to now we have a little kid in David Collins showing him the family portraits. And that, by the way, that's the last episode that, like I said, James Hall is going to be a part of. The next episode you get after that is John Carlin. John Carlin is replaced James Hall as Willie Loomis, and that's going to be the Willie Loomis we remember most for obvious reasons. But John Carlin does. Well, before I get my thoughts, what are you guys' thoughts of John Carlin's Willie Loomis? I think he did a great job. Gordon, I wonder if John Hall got fired because he had the attitude. Okay, I'll be a jerk, but a vampire, I'm out of here. That's a good one. I like that, Gordon. That's funny. Actually, I think John Hall was okay, but John Carlin owned that role from day one. He did. I think I'll say this: James Hall laid the seeds, but John Carlin picked up the pieces that James Hall laid and really made the character his own. Because here's this character that they don't. You would just think they're gonna when he's opening up a coffin they're gonna kill this dude off, but no, not at all. I think that's every time I go back and watch this, that's what's so shocking because he's a thief, he's a criminal. Barnabas, to his credit, plays to that he's changed this man, that he's tamed Willie Loomis, and tame is an interesting word. Susie loved him. I don't think we would have felt any sympathy for James Hall like we did for Carlin. Perhaps, perhaps, could be. How is everybody, by the way? I say we have 4 people. Also, So Willie Loomis, John Carlin's Willie Loomis, is going to get into a fight with Mitchell Ryan's Burke Devlin in the Blue Whale. And there's a nice little throwdown here. John Carlin's Willie Loomis pulls a knife, and Burke Devlin fights him. He socks him, knocks him to the ground. I love what John Carlin does here because he threatens to kill Burke Devlin in front of Jason McGuire. Jason McGuire clearly hears this and makes no effort to warn Burke at all. You want to talk about thick as thieves at that point? Like, dude, your friend just threatened to murder, dude. Like, this does. I get you're not the nicest dude, but this does not bother you at least. It's like, nah, no, this is just another day at the office for these two. And ultimately, John Carlin's Willie Loomis starts asking around about looking into the Collins family history. He keeps hearing the heartbeat. Barnabas is calling to him, but he's more interested in the Naomi Collins legend that a pirate gave her jewels. So John Carlin's Willie Loomis, Elizabeth wants, keep in mind, because of what James Hall's Willie Loomis did with trying to get at Carolyn. Carolyn threatened to shoot him. The girl's feeling unsafe. Elizabeth wants Willie gone. She wants him out of the house. So what happens is, for those who don't know, is you have a moment where, okay, Elizabeth wants him gone. Jason says, okay, but he needs money. She gives him, like, I think $500. And so in an envelope that arrives, John Carlin Willie Loomis is waiting for it. He goes, where is it? And he said, it's here. I'll get it. He goes, well, get it, man. And John Carlin says he's going to go up and pack. John Carlin's Willie Loomis says he's going to go up and pack. Yeah, he doesn't go up and pack. He goes to the tool shed and gets some tools, some crowbar, a pulley system. I mean, he's looking to rob him blind, literally, which is crazy. And when we thought Willie Loomis could not sink any lower, he goes to Eagle Hill Cemetery and he's going to rob himself a grave, the grave of Naomi Collins. It's interesting what happens, because when you watch the episode prior to the release of Barnabas, you see him rig up this pulley system where he's trying to pull the coffin lid off of Naomi's thing. Do you guys think he's hooking the hook to the ring on the lion's mouth subconsciously, or do you think he's doing it just to get the coffin lid off? What do you all think? Because I know I have my preconceived notion. It's a strange question, I know, but it's a question nonetheless. Really is. Oh my goodness. Gordon, I think he was so eager to get to the alleged riches that he didn't watch what he was doing. That's a good point. There's a moment when Willie Loomis is so frustrated with what he's doing too. He like throws like the crowbar. He's mad. The calmest he gets. Susie, I agree with Gordon. I agree with Gordon too. Gordon made a great point. The calmest he gets is when he lays his cigarette on the coffin, and he when he rigged up that pulley system, then he pulls. He's trying to get the coffin lid off of Naomi's coffin. It doesn't go. The ring in the lion's mouth pulls, and a secret door opens. And inside that secret door is a chained coffin. And what's about to happen is his Dark Shadows history. Willie takes the hammer and chisel, and he's knocking the chains off. He opens up the coffin, and I love John Carlin's face. He goes from excited. He sees jewels. He sees money. Jennifer, I agree. He is like a man possessed looking for the jewels. Hello, Jennifer. How are you? Welcome to the chat. A very good point. He also, too, when he opens the coffin, he sees jewels. Because remember, John Carlin's facial expression, he's happy at first. But then he goes from happy to terrified. And it's a beautiful acting job by John Carlin. John Carlin really, I mean, he takes over beautifully for James Hall. And you see the hand come up and grab the neck. And from then on, we're going to have, I don't want to say a manhunt because not too many people are searching for Willie other than Jason McGuire. But it's really interesting what happens because prior to Barnabas coming to the house, no one can find Willie. Dennis Patrick Jason McGuire looks for him, and so he's looking for him in places, and he tells Elizabeth, I looked for him in all places. She goes, well, look for him in other places. And he looks at the cemetery, and again, we meet the groundskeeper that we met earlier with Willie Loomis, and he says, oh, your friend was here. And this is where Jason McGuire notices Willie's cigarette. And it's really, really, it's like, okay, I know you were here. And for Jason, it's like, man, you robbed a grave? Really? I was about to give you $500 and you go try to rob a grave. But it doesn't look like he was successful at all. All the tools have been cleaned up. The only thing that was missed, and I love that they did this, was the cigarette. It was so cool to see that. The crew did a great job of setting that little thing in motion. And Jason comes in the door. He takes off his coat. He just lets it lay. And then we hear the knock. And Mrs. Johnson opens the door. She's got this shocked look on her face. And Jonathan Frid delivers the line. Good evening. What did you guys think of the arrival of Barnabas? He comes in the house. Mrs. Johnson just lets him in. You know, he's Elizabeth's cousin. What did you guys think of the arrival of Barnabas Collins? And the build-up to it, by the way. I think the build-up to it is just as good as the arrival. I think both complement each other very well. In my view. He made a grand entrance, Susie. Yes, he did. Absolutely. What did you think of Gordon? I think Barnabas' arrival is a great piece of work in terms of writing and acting. Plus, Barnabas has been well fed and he's confident of resuming his life. I like that. I love that, Gordon. Jennifer, very suave, not as creepy as you would think. Very true. I think when we think about vampires in general, how creepy vampires can be, this vampire is not, he's not creepy. He's very gentlemanly. He's very, as Victoria Winters, he's almost courtly. And he is, and like Elizabeth says, it's how a true Collins should be. Well, because he is a true Collins. He comes They say about coming from another world. Well, in a sense, he is. He's coming from another time. Susie, exactly. They were all so taken with him. Yep, they were. And that's the thing, too. He's, when we think about a vampire, we usually see this pale figure who's ready to bite you. He's not coming in your house to talk to you. To me, I had never seen a vampire like this just come into someone's home and be just so formal. Jennifer, also, he had a hat, which I don't think we ever see again. we don't. We don't see the hat. The next time we do, I think we do see a hat. I want to say it's 1897. Not the same hat, but a hat. Gordon. Plus, he probably saw the portrait and said, "There goes my cover identity of Rupert Sparky Collins, my great, 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 great grandson." I like how when he's looking at the portrait and Mrs. Johnson is going up the steps, he turns and goes, "Oh, and you may tell her that it's Barnabas Collins." He says, "Oh, madam, you may tell her that it's Barnabas Collins." And when Joan Bennett's Elizabeth Collins comes down the steps and she's like, "It is Barnabas." And she can't believe the resemblance, obviously, with the portrait. It's so well done by Joan and Jonathan. And they do not miss a beat at all. And they go into the drawing room and she's talking to him and he's talking to her. Again, it's just so formal. You don't see this from another vampire. What did you all think of Joan Bennett and Jonathan Frid's instant chemistry with one another? It was, to me, it was so grand and great. Again, like Gordon touched upon the writing and acting, and really you constantly see this in Dark Shadows, where the actors are just complimenting what the writers are doing. But what did you guys think of Joan Bennett and Jonathan Frid's instant chemistry? They were just so great together. Again, I want to say hi to everybody who's in the chat. It's great that you are here. I'm glad everyone's here. Who's all here? It's so nice to do this with you guys. It's very cool to interact. But I do think that they just do a phenomenal job. Jennifer, they were both very elegant. They were, absolutely. Susie, they did have great chemistry. And Gordon, I think the fact that both were experienced stage actors helped a lot. And I think they knew that they were doing where to go. And that forced some great chemistry. It really did. The writers with Barnabas, remember, Dan Curtis wanted to kill him off in like a month. And it's like, here's Barnabas. He becomes this popular character. Most great things in television or film happen completely by accident or by just the fans falling in love with a character. And Jonathan Frid and the writers made us fall in love with Barnabas because he was so, like you guys have been pointing out, he was so elegant. He was so cordial. And as we go along with him, we're going to see he gets into this whole offense. Keep in mind, Jason McGuire is still looking for Willie Loomis. I love how there's a conversation between Burke, Maggie, and Joe Haskell's coming in. He's looking all beat up. Susie, they did a great job making the audience believe that they were really related. Both definitely Collinses. Absolutely. I think that's something, like Susie's pointing out, that the actors did a great job really just making you believe, hey, they're really related. I mean, though we know Barnabas is a vampire, and you might be screaming at the TV, "Don't let him in the house." But they just did a really great job with the chemistry and making you feel, hey, this guy's a Collins, no matter what, you know. But I love how they're talking about stuff, and Joe Haskell, when he comes into Blue Whale and he sits down, he talks about they found a calf professionally drained of blood. What a creepy story that is. It was. And they're talking about if Willie Loomis comes back, what'll happen. And here's Willie. You talk about looking half dead. Willie does. And I love this. Who'd have thunk Willie Loomis apologizing to Burke Devlin? Burke goes over. Willie, do you remember what I said if you ever came back? Yeah, I remember. Well, and he's like, I'm sorry. How shocked were y'all that Willie Loomis apologizing to Burke Devlin? For me, it's so shocking. Like, oh yes, and talk about great acting by Joel Crothers as he was so shaken up. Absolutely, absolutely. When he comes, he looks so glum too, like he just lost his best friend. Like he looks like so visibly shaken of what he saw, and he even tries to avoid the conversation too. He doesn't really want to talk about what he saw. But Maggie and Bert, they're sort of proud, like, no, you could tell us we're your friends. It's not pleasant, like he says. It's not, and it's not either. It's not pleasant at all, the conversation. I mean, here's this, you're not expecting to hear that a calf got professionally drained of its blood and that it was, it was found that way. Gordon, I'm sure that Barnabas threatened to frame Willie for the vampirism through feeding Willie French fries with ketchup, but it is a huge change of personality for Willie to apologize to Burke. It really was. It really was. It just, to see that, this is where you see the 180 change in Willie Loomis, the complete turnaround. Or at least you're going to start to see it here and continue to see it for a big part of the early Barnabas arc, where Willie Loomis is just like, I'm sorry, Burke, and Burke's like, yeah, I love Mitchell Ryan's performance. You're sorry? Like, I didn't think you knew the meaning of the or knew how to say that word. Such great acting, and when this happens, he's like, are you okay? Burke's now concerned. And when Jason McGuire comes in, he sees Willie Loomis, and Burke stops him like, something's wrong with your friend here. And it's just, then Jason starts questioning, and then he sees that he's got this cut on his wrist, and he pulls it away. And you talk about how happy Willie was to see Jason. Willie was like, Jason. And he's like, oh, no, wait. I'm not so happy because now you're going to ask me where I've been. I can't answer that. Now, Willie ends up back at Collinwood because he's sick. What did you think of John Carlin's performance when he's looking at the portrait of Barnabas and he just screams and collapses? I love that. What a John Carlin, it was beautiful to watch that. He's laying on the floor. He's just on the floor. He's like someone knocked him down. But we know what knocked him down now. We know. I love that too. I felt so bad for him, Susie. Yeah, I did too at that point. Like, man, this guy does not deserve he does not deserve to be treated this way now. Even like I said, even after everything we see him like early on, it's like you're starting to feel bad for Willie. You really are. But yeah, he's standing by the portrait and he he's looking right at it, and then you hear this scream, and when Jason comes out and he's passed out. Go Jennifer, I think all of the sickness he had to act out was some of his best work on the show. Gordon, given how cruel we've seen Barnabas, he probably worked Willie over psychologically through abuse, that and drinking his blood, which is dangerous. Here it's 90 proof. Right, Willie. Willie, Gordon's right, and Jennifer is too. You really have John just delivering a hell of a performance. And here's here, like Gordon said, here's this guy who's been beaten physically and really psychologically. I mean, he. You want to get an early glimpse of the psychology. Watch John Carlin's face change from when he opens the coffin from excitement to scared. It's one of the best, most awesome psychological moments in DS history. It really is. And it continues to go on with Barnabas and Willie, where you have that moment in front of the portrait where Willie's looking at it and he's like, and then he screams and passes out. Then when he's laying up in bed and they're treating him, he's trying to get out of bed. He's trying to, and the doctor takes his blood eventually. I love how when the dogs start howling, he's like, I hear you calling me. What a line by John Carlin, and it's so good. Eventually, Willie does leave the house. He does escape, and lo and behold, he ends up working for Barnabas Collins. And I love how when after Barnabas shows up, he eventually meets Carolyn, and he meets Roger, and Roger's so informal. I mean, this is the nicest I've seen Roger with somebody because he's a Collins, which is Gordon. Gordon. I'm surprised Fred and Carlin never toured in a production of The Odd Couple post DS. I think they could have pulled it off. Yeah, I think so too. They would have been great in a production of The Odd Couple. Absolutely. Who would you put as Felix, Gordon? Who would you put as Felix and Oscar? There's a question for it for The Odd Couple. That would have been interesting to watch too. They could again. There's a lot of things the DS. Gordon, Fred as Felix, Carlin as Oscar, and Lewis Edmonds as Murray the cop. Very, very nice. I like that. Very, very nice. They could have, again, the Dark Shadows actors never really got a big opportunity post DS. I mean, post Dark Shadows. They just really didn't. Hollywood, for whatever reason, did not pick up the phone enough. I mean, shame on them. Jennifer, that would be interesting, Gordon. It really would. I mean, what did you guys and gals think of the scene at the old house with David and Barnabas, and David is telling him about Josette Dupre Collins. And keep in mind, we don't know there's a history yet between Barnabas and Josette. What did you all think of that? That whole That whole sequence. Here's David. He's tromping up the steps, jumping down. And when he jumps down the last time, the doors open up, and here's Barnabas. And, are you a ghost? Well, if I were a ghost, would you be talking to me so calmly? Well, yes, I talk to ghosts all the time. I talk especially the ghost of Josette. It's such a great scene by David Hennessy and Jonathan Fred. It really is. It's really, really cool. But what did you guys and gals think about that scene in the old house between David Collins and Barnabas Collins, David Hennessy and Jonathan Fred? That's my question to you guys today. For, well, one of my many. I have others. I think it's really well done though too. You can see a bit of the hurt and not just the curiosity, but the hurt in Jonathan Fred's face. Like, I think that's something Fred does so well that doesn't get talked enough. That when Barnabas is listening to David, he's sort of hurt. Like, he's hearing about how Josette would protect people, and Jennifer, they were great. David Hennessy was always on. Yes, he was. Hennessy was so good. He really, really was. Great actor. They all were great. That's the thing. That's what gets me about Dark Shadows. Gordon, I think that scene is brilliant. It's in contrast, David's childlike wonder with Barnabas' world wearying. Plus, you can hear the pain in Barnabas's words. Absolutely, absolutely, what Gordon just said. You can really hear it too when you have Barnabas who is back alone in the old house when they're looking at the portrait they're looking at the portrait of Barnabas at the Great House, the 1795 portrait, and they comment about how it's just Carl, like it's just a picture of him, and it's as if it were a picture of him, and they cut and they show Barnabas standing in the old house, and he looks up at the portrait of Josette, and the line is, "I was a Collins. Where were you when I was turned into something even my own father loathed? Why didn't you why didn't you protect me?" Is what he's at. Where were you? Basically, he's asking her, "Why didn't you protect me?" And it's such a great line. And he says, "If my father's ghost is here with yours, tell him I've come home. The chains he bound me with have been broken. I am free and alive now to live the life I never had, whatever that may turn out to be." And it's such a, the thing of it is, he doesn't sound pissed or angry. He just sounds hurt that he was, and in 1795, we learned why that he felt this way. I won't get into that here today, but again, it's such a great little set piece when you think of 1795. Um, what did you guys and gals think of Jason McGuire and Barnabas's first interaction together? I I love this. Jennifer, that speech is awesome. It always makes you a little sad. It really does. It it makes you, everything is making you feel very sorry for Barnabas and Willie. Excuse me. Okay. Okay. Hold on.
Porch light.
Oh.
Not kitchen.
But everything is making you feel sorry for.
You leave the kitchen light on.
Everything is making you feel sorry for Barnabas and Willie, and it's really well done by the writers and the actor himself, and really Carlin does a great job as well. I mean, it's just so good. It's criminal. But what did you guys and gals think of the interaction between Jason McGuire and Barnabas Collins? It's really, I love how they're both sort of testing each other. Susie, I think Barnabas looks at Jason like he knows Jason is a scumbag. Yeah, he does. He really does. I think too that, I mean, look, Barnabas knows a lot about Jason because of Willie, obviously, and I think it's like, hey, I know you're trash, but he doesn't. Willie doesn't tell him quite everything that Jason is trying to do, because even Willie himself isn't sure. Like we were alluding to earlier, all of us, Gordon, Susie, that Jason hasn't been completely upfront with his plans with Elizabeth. And until later on, when we find out those plans that he wants to marry her, I mean, look who the family turns to for help. They turn to Barnabas. Slowly, I know technically 1795 is Barnabas's official babyface turn, but really, in many ways, when you're watching the early Barnabas episodes, they're doing everything to set up some of Barnabas's babyface turn. It may not be nothing huge, but it's the little things. I mean, in all honesty, does he have to confront Jason? I mean, no, he could just mind his own business, but he does anyway. Gordon, I think Barnabas went when he meets Jason is secretly assessing whether he's friend or foe or dinner. Very, very nice. I mean, yeah, because if Jason can be a meal, that's the thing. If Jason can be a meal for Barnabas, it's all the better for Barnabas, and really, it's all the better for the family. And it's interesting. That's the first person Barnabas ends up killing. We see kill is Jason McGuire. I mean, that's who they end up feeding. They end up having Barnabas feed on. Oh my gosh! But it's really like a measuring stick, Susie. But also, I don't think Barnabas really trusts any man who isn't a Collins during his arrival, other than maybe Sam Evans. But he just used him to get close to Maggie. Yeah, Barnabas does a lot of. This is where again, I'm not going to try to jump around too much, but we'll start there. That's a great point Susie just made. Susie, he didn't care for Burke or Joe either. No, you can tell that too. He's more, how do I put this? He's more humoring them when he talks to them in a weird way, but he's not letting it on. Like when he's interacting with them in the blue. Hi, I love you. When he's interacting with them in the Blue Whale, and when he talks to Burke Devlin, when it's Mitchell Ryan's Burke Devlin, he shows off his cane, and Burke admires it at first. And even with Joe, like when he doesn't he doesn't really interact too much with Joe until the old house. And we see Barnabas go to the cafe where he meets Maggie. You clearly don't see Jonathan's reflection in the mirror. I love how they do this little camera work in the shadows. Susie, exactly, and his interactions with the women is so different. Yep, you can tell. That's another great point Susie's making, that watch his interactions with Victoria, with Carolyn, and then later on with Burke, with Joe, and even with Maggie. Like Maggie's a really telltale interaction, because when they're in the diner, and Maggie agrees to serve him coffee because it's so late. Like, she's closing up for the diner, and that's when Barnabas comes in for a nightcap. And so she asks about him, that he's in town. Like, is he new in town? He says yes, and she says, "What's your name?" And he says, "I'm a Collins of Barnabas Collins," and she didn't know he was in town. This is news to her. It's really great job by Catherine Lee Scott and Jonathan Frid. Just their interaction is so great. And Barnabas, on purpose, leaves the cane. Gordon, I think Barnabas had discovered, forgot blood. These donuts and coffee are great. I could live on this. Forget the blood. Hey, I want some coffee and donuts. I want the Krispy Kreme donuts. Do you have the cherry? We'll substitute cherry filled donuts for blood. Let's give me the cherry filled donuts. You can have your blood. See, I like that mentality. I'm with that mentality right there. I'm a fat dude though. I'm overweight. I'm with the cherry filled donut philosophy. But so you also have this great moment between Catherine Lee Scott and Jonathan Frid, where when you see the interaction where you hear the dogs howling and Catherine Lee Scott's Maggie Evans is starting to get scared. Maggie made him a fresh pot even though her shift was over. Yep, Jennifer's right. And this is really the first time Barnabas is intimidating someone who isn't Willie Loomis. He's intimidating a woman. Even though, she doesn't realize, and Catherine does a great job of, making you feel sorry for her. And, she doesn't realize that it's Barnabas doing this to her, causing the dogs to howl, if you will. And I say wolves, but I mean to say dogs, so I apologize. But the dogs to howl, and you see her face and how scared she is. What did you all think of that scene of the dogs howling, Catherine Lee Scott, her facial features selling the fear? It was so great. This is, you guys brought up the different interactions. This is a key different interaction because, like I said, we hadn't seen Barnabas intimidate anybody but Willie up until this point. But here, he's intimidating Maggie. It's really, to me, it's just so creepy to watch and so good at the same time. It's criminally underrated. It really is. Really, really is. But yeah, what did you guys and gals think of that interaction? Her facial expression and how scared she was is really, really good, in my opinion. But you really have this, once he leaves the king and he leaves Gordon, it's shocking because we not only see Barnabas become obsessed with Maggie, but until this point, her character had a slightly harder edge. Now that edge is being blunted. That's true. Absolutely. Gordon's right. Susie, I would have had that same reaction. Absolutely. It's creepy, isn't it? It's just really it's like Gordon said, we see Maggie, who's been this hard edged character. Now it's like, nope, not so much anymore. Jennifer, Maggie is sassy at the start of the show, then is fearful, vulnerable, and then finds herself again when she refuses to be Josette. Absolutely. Everybody, thank you. That is so good. And it's true. I mean, characters in Dark Shadows go through so many ranges of emotion and so many. It just goes to show you how much range all the actors really had. I mean, they when I won't jump ahead to the kidnapping, but when they return the cane to Barnabas, Joe is more like, "Come on, let's get out of here," and Maggie's so determined to return the cane, and when she does, Barnabas is so grateful, right? But later on, once he kidnaps Maggie, once he takes Maggie, and as Jennifer points out, once he, you know, has her dress up like Josette, and there's this moment of they're having this dinner, then there's a knock on the door. So there's a constant interruption between the two. I think this is another thing that helps Maggie too, the constant interruption of why he isn't able to turn Maggie. That, and like Jennifer said, Maggie finds her willpower all over again. When Maggie slams that music box shut, I'm Maggie Evans. That is a holy shit moment. It really, really is. It's one of the most defining moments of really just the character of Maggie Evans to find herself again. And I mean, prior to that too, Sam being used by Barnabas, it just feels so sleazy of Barnabas to do this. I mean, what did you guys think of I mean, I know he does get the portrait done, don't get me wrong, but what did you guys think of Barnabas hiring Sam Evans to paint his portrait? To paint a new, you know, to paint a new portrait, if you will. Like he needs a new portrait. Barnabas did not need a new portrait. He knew that. He was, like you guys are saying, he was using Sam. Not only am I going to pay you for your portrait, I'm going to kidnap your daughter. Why not, right? Gordon, it's simply a way for Barnabas to keep tabs on Maggie. Total stalker move. Absolutely. And it is right, because for people who don't know Dark Shadows, Barnabas is a stalker in a lot of ways with fangs. I mean, he's a vampire. But Joe Haskell and Maggie Evans were dating. But Maggie is not living with Joe, nor is Joe living with Maggie. Now, we're going to see when Barnabas bites Maggie and she starts having these dreams about being a skeleton, being a skeleton in a coffin. We're going to see this moment of where people are staying with her. You have Joe staying with her. You have, Victoria Winter staying with her. I love how Sam, his excuse, where's he at? He's at the Blue Whale. Do you really need to be at the Blue Whale at this point in time in your life? Do you really? Honestly, now, do you? No, you don't. You really, really don't. But what did you guys think of the dreams? Maggie's dream of her laying in the coffin, and she's screaming. She's like, ah! I love how they do the skeleton effect too. It's really, really well done. Again, for say what you want for about a show that was made 19 in the 1960s, the special effects still hold up today. I mean, they really, really do. uh, you know they just, it's amazing. I don't know what else to say about that, but it was amazing. Also, here's another question for you guys and gals. When we think about the ghost of Josette coming out of the portrait, right, the white dress, what did you guys think of Catherine Lee Scott in Josette's dress when we first see her in the old house? This is after Barnabas has taken her, obviously, and we see her in the white dress. Even David thinks it's Josette, and why not? So that's my two questions for you guys and gals right now. Oh my goodness. Mm. It's Susie. I thought she looked like the portrait. Yep, absolutely. I hope that's I hope that's something they do, like when or if we get the sequel series, that when they do Josette's portrait, just do Catherine Lee Scott. Just do Catherine Lee Scott. Do a younger Catherine Lee Scott. Gordon, I think she looked well. Absolutely. She looked stunning. She looked amazing. Um, what did you guys think of the interaction between when she's up in the room and she closes the music box? How big was that moment, her closing the music box and Maggie finding herself again? How big was that for you guys and gals? Because we're gonna get into we're gonna get into Maggie's escape and Jason's death. My God. Jennifer, the portrait in the movie is my favorite. Yeah, actually, the portrait in the movie in House of Dark Shadows is Catherine Lee Scott, I believe. Uh, Susie, also the portrait that looked a little sad, and Maggie had the expression a lot of time. Gordon, it was a great way to demonstrate how Barnabas brainwashing, gaslighted ended. It was powerful. Yeah, I mean, Barnabas does a lot to Maggie for sure. But the one thing I sort of made the video. I did make a video why I forgave Barnabas. I'm sure you guys heard that one. So I won't rehash that one. But when Barnabas puts her in the dungeon, this is where we meet the ghost of Sarah Collins, Barnabas' sister. Jennifer, to me, the one in the series did not look enough like her. Mm, I think it looked enough. I do in a way. I know that's fine if you don't, but to me it did. And simply because of I don't. I'm going to say this, and I love Alexander Molkiaus, and I love Victoria Winters. It is my favorite character. I don't think the portrait looked like Victoria Winters. I really don't. I think the portrait, when you first see it, sort of does look a bit. When I first saw it, I'm thinking that sort of looks like Maggie in a way. And that was way before they ever introduced Barnabas. When I first saw it, again, that's just me. If you guys disagree, you can. But for me, that's what I saw. Again, we all vision's a funny thing. It really is. But when I first saw the portrait, I was just like, that looks like Maggie. Oh my goodness. But yeah, in House of Dark Shadows, it is Maggie. It is Kathleen Scott. Susie, when she slammed that music box, it was very powerful. You just believed she now had the strength to get away. Yep. Jennifer, it may have been too that they made it before they decided who would be Josette. Yeah, yeah, I think that's the thing too. I mean, portrait portraits were a very important part of Dark Shadows and still are. Jennifer definitely looks more like Maggie than Victoria. Absolutely. Though now I'm not gonna play devil's advocate here, but I will say when you go back to the beginning episodes, there's a line. It's after Victoria is saved by the ghost of Josette from by the ghost of Josette, by the widows, and the ghost of Bill Malloy. They all get rid of Matthew Morgan, and she says about Josette saving her, and her and Elizabeth getting in this conversation about, well, Josette only saves Collinses, and she goes, well, maybe I'm related to Josette, and Elizabeth says, well, that would make you a Collins. So there is that little there, but we all know what that is. But back to Barnabas, and I love the ghost of Sarah Collins. My favorite ghost ever is Sarah. And what did you guys think of the introduction of Sarah Collins? Here Maggie Evans just sees this little girl outside her cell. What a sequence. I mean, it's a lot different than the ghost of Josette. I love the fact that Dark Shadows never introduced a ghost the same exact way. They always found ways to introduce their ghost different. With Josette, she's coming out of a portrait. With Sarah, she's just there. And it's really Susie. It was the first time we saw a real life ghost. Yeah, with to Susie's point, with Josette, it was more like a not necessarily a person. It was more like a specter ghost. With Sarah, you see a literal person. You see somebody who looked like you could reach out and touch them. And I think that was so well done and a great decision by the writers and just in general, a great decision in general for them to do that. Also, too, keep in mind they don't say who this ghost is right away, which is really cool. Gordon, Sarah's ghost was a great idea. Provide a way to push back against Barnabas' cruelty and remind the audience he was human, yet be immune to retribution, cruelty from her brother. Absolutely. Gordon's right. And keep in mind too, this this is going to be Maggie's she Maggie's assistance is going to be through Josette Lee, and doing my first rewatch now, and I never thought at 48 I'd be humming London Bridge randomly in my day. You're welcome. You're welcome. There you go. There's nothing wrong with that, man. Um, not at all. Not at all. I like that London Bridge. Um, and keep in mind too, they when you get this, here's this. I love when they do the London Bridge song, and then you hear Maggie singing it, and Barnabas just thinks she's lost her mind, and he decides, well, he's gonna get rid of her, and Sarah shows Maggie the way out. Keep in mind too, when Sarah starts playing outside the old house, Willie goes, "Hey Barnabas, I saw this little kid earlier. Oh, that David again. No, no, this was a little girl." And Barnabas is like, "A little girl? No, you couldn't have seen no little girl." It's sort of creeping Barnabas out a bit. I love that. I love the interaction between Carlin and Fred there. It's so good. It's so classic. Um, so when she shows her the secret passage and Maggie gets out, you have the chase sequence, which is really cool through the secret corridors of the old house. Maggie and Barnabas. What did y'all think of the chase sequence of Barnabas chasing after Maggie to try to stop her from escaping? This was really, I'll say it was very, very intense and very well done. Very well paced, too. I mean, that's the thing about chase sequences. Pacing is important. I mean, you see it in movies like Halloween and those slashers, but here, this isn't a slasher, and yet the soap does, Dark Shadows did a great job with this pacing sequence, with this chase sequence. I loved it. I really, really did. Lee, and it was stressful. It's very, like I said, it's very intense, but very well paced. It's, you're sort of wondering, is she going to get away? Susie, he was so great in changing from being the charismatic, classy gentleman to being so evil. Absolutely. Absolutely. But the chase sequence between Barnabas and Maggie, Barnabas going after Maggie, was so good. Um, Again, really, really great. I want to say hi to the 6 people who are all in here. Thank you for stopping by. Also, because I don't want to get too far into Julia and stuff, I don't want to touch upon that. I just want to touch upon, obviously, we touched upon the arrival, and we touched upon certain things, the kidnapping of Maggie. Now Maggie escapes. Now they do choose to fake Maggie's death, which I love. This was smart. Keep in mind, earlier in the arc, we get the mention of they mentioned Dr. Hoffman as a man. Now they're going to change the sex of the character and say Dr. Julia Hoffman. And Maggie's going to get sent to Wincliffe. And who shows up at the hospital? Barnabas. I heard they brought the Evans girl here. Yeah, who'd you hear that from? Nobody. And he says, Dr. Woodard says Maggie's dead, and Barnabas believes him. And you can see Fred's face is like, oh God, what did I do? There was a sequence between Willie and Barnabas in the old house where Willie is playing basically Jiminy Cricket, and he's like, Barnabas, we killed that girl. We killed her. Think about how many times Barnabas has hit Willie at this point, or just beat him senselessly, or choked him or grounded him. He doesn't do any of that at all. And he's listening to him. Jennifer, the scene at the hospital is creepy as all get out. It's very creepy. Because when he's in the hospital, you're thinking, oh my God, what if he just walks into a room or disappear? Like, he could disappear and reappear anywhere. What if he goes into a room and sees her? It's it's creepy, but again, he believes the doctor. He believes Dr. Woodard. What did you guys and gals think of Willie playing? I mean, basically being Jiminy Cricket. He's guilting Barnabas that, hey, we killed that girl, because they do believe they killed her. They believe that she's dead. And Barnabas is sort of feeling it. It's like, oh man, I shouldn't have did that. He's not saying it. Fred's body language is saying it though. Fred does a really good job of giving off this body language of, oh my god, I should not have killed this girl. Great acting by Jonathan Fred. Just great acting. Really great job. But it just, he also too, when we come back from this, we're going to get the introduction of Anthony George as Burke Devlin. I don't think Anthony George did a bad job, in my opinion. I just, think he wasn't Mitchell Ryan. Oh my gosh. I love how Burke gets invited to the wedding of Elizabeth and Jason. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm going to let you guys know where I'm going to stop to. We're going to stop at right after Jason gets killed, and that's coming up here. So Lee and Barnabas had an idea of right and wrong, but like back in 1795, Willie is more of his modern day conscience. Well, in 1795, Ben Stokes is his conscience, and to your point, yeah, Willie sort of is trying to become Barnabas's modern conscience. I think his biggest modern conscience, or a reminder of it to what Gordon was saying, is his sister Sarah. Mitchell Ryan gave Burke Devlin a sense of toughness and ruthlessness. Anthony George basically played Burke as your local accountant. True. Sure. Jennifer, that's a good analogy, Gordon. It is. It really is. And two, when you have, you know, there is a moment where Anthony George's Burke Devlin does check up on Barnabas's backstory. I don't want to get too far into that, but that's another topic for another time. But with this, you have the wedding with Jason and Liz is going to happen. They're all set to go. You have Burke there, Carolyn's there, Victoria Winters is there. Keep in mind, by this time, Victoria Winters has been told by Elizabeth the secret of the basement. So, which is really, really, again, I mean, Vicky was the one person, Elizabeth felt she could fight to. By the way, there was a sequence where the widows were calling to Elizabeth to jump off Widow's Hill. Barnabas stops Elizabeth from jumping. So you have that you have Barnabas sort of, stopping that action, which I love. Sorry, excuse me. It shows Barnabas. I don't think it just shows Barnabas cared. I think it gives a hint that Barnabas has seen enough people jump from that hill, which is really interesting, really good too. Now, obviously, Elizabeth confesses. I love how Carolyn has Uncle Roger's gun in the purse. She's going to cap him, but doesn't. Now, to get to the death sequence, here's Jason. He comes to the old house. He tells Willie, I want the jewels. He meets Willie at the Blue Whale first. And then Willie gives him. He goes, "No, I want more." He goes, "That's all. No, I want more." And Willie's like, "No, I can't do that." And finally, when Jason comes to the old house, Gordon, I'm heading out. Good night, out. Good night, Gordon. Thanks for stopping by, brother. Also, what you have is, Dennis Patrick's Jason McGuire coming to the old house, and he finds the coffin, and just like Willie, this is where his greed gets the better of him. He goes, "That's his." Willie tries to tell him that's his coffin. Oh yeah, Willie, that's his coffin. Yeah, right. And when Jason McGuire opens it, there's Barnabas, and Barnabas ends up choking Jason and ends up killing him. That's where I'm going to stop this, because I think I've covered a good bit of the beginning of Barnabas. Is there anything anybody wants to add? Please message now, and I will talk to you guys here. This has been fun again, really, really fun to discuss the beginning of Barnabas. What I'm gonna try to do is leave a link to the jonathanfrid.org website. I know, Susie, this was awesome. Thank you, Susie. By the way, thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Lily. And this was fun. This was a lot of fun to do. These are just fun. I want to do these to talk to you guys, interact with you, to get your thoughts. I don't think I missed anything. I tried not to. It's just, Jennifer Lee, thanks everyone. This was so fun. I keep missing the live chats. I'm gonna try to do these on at least on Fridays. So not every Friday, obviously, but I'm gonna try to do these on a Friday, because the weekends is pretty much free for a lot of people. But just keep your bells and notifications turned on YouTube. I also post stuff in the groups and on Twitter, if you're on there, and on Facebook, obviously. So, but what did you guys think of Jason McGuire's death before we head on out of here? Barnabas has fed Jason, basically. Oh, goodness. I think it was just, I was sort of shocked that they killed Jason. I'm going to be honest, because I really thought, after everything with Carolyn, with the tension between Carolyn and Jason, Susie, I was glad he was out of the picture finally. Yeah, I could understand that for sure. Jennifer, it was a perfect ending. I could certainly understand it. I just thought, from my perspective, after all the tension between him and Carolyn, that maybe Carolyn was going to follow him out of town, and we were going to get some sort of other episodes where Carolyn was following him along and tried to find her dad now that she knew the truth. They don't do that. I'm not sad about that they don't do that, because they do eventually bring Paul Stoddard to Collinsport. Obviously, we know that. But it was a great, great kill sequence in the old house. So, all right, guys, I want to thank everybody who stopped by. Thank you, Susie, Gordon, Lee, and Jennifer, Li. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. This was so much fun. And I'll see you guys on another live stream down the road. I'll obviously keep you posted. But thank you again, Gordon. I'll see you Sunday night, my dude. I know you checked out a little bit ago. But, yep, thumbs up, everybody. Thank you so much, and have a great night, and God bless.